Hey folks, today's video is going to be talking about how to deal with gatekeepers. A lot of us have probably dealt with gatekeepers in our hobby. Somebody who is decided that they are deciding who can join the hobby and who's okay to come in and who's not. First of all, gatekeepers, no one's assigned them. There's no official gatekeeper to a hobby. If you want to start playing tabletop role-playing games or wargaming or tabletop games, go for it. Nobody should stop you from joining the hobby. But unfortunately, there are people who decide to be gatekeepers, and especially if you are in a minority, you have a higher chance of running into somebody who's decided that whatever aspect that they perceive about you is not welcome in the hobby. And so that can make it a lot more difficult to get into whatever hobby it is that you're trying to get into. It's not necessarily going to prevent you, but it's going to put enough hurdles in the way that, maybe you decide, I'm not welcome here, I'm not going to do this, which is bullshit. I've dealt with gatekeeping both in my professional career as well as in the hobby. My professional career, I started out in theatrical production on the production end, so that's still a fairly male-dominated field, and especially dealing with older individuals who looked at me and went, oh, it's the little girl, I gotta help her out. Even though I was in a position higher than them, that was frustrating, and I definitely ran into some gatekeeping there. And then in the hobby, I've run into various forms and varying degrees of gatekeeping. I didn't get into tabletop RPGs early on because the people that I knew who played tabletop RPGs kind of presented it to me as, this is the boys club. You're not welcome. You're a girl. This is guy time. And then later on, that's kind of all I was seeing, as well as I've run into just little things, even at a local shop, having one of the store employees come up and, I'd stopped in there after work, so I was in work clothes and stuff like that, wasn't wearing an obviously geeky t-shirt. That's not an excuse. But a store employee came up to me as I was looking through paints, trying to figure out, I want to go home after work and paint a mini because I had a rough day at work. And I was trying to decide which of these two paints I wanted to get, which color blue exactly was the right color for the mini I was painting. And the employee came up and said, oh, these aren't normal just crafting paints. These are specifically for miniatures. And it was the way that it was presented in the, I was an outsider. I didn't know about the hobby. Instead of coming up and saying, hey, do you need any help? Do you have any questions? Something that he would ask anybody who is in there, man, woman, whatever, but because I looked like, I'm the little girl that's here buying stuff for my husband, that's another thing I get, drives me up the wall. Because he assumed I wasn't part of the hobby, there was that level of frustration, I have to prove that I belong here. Okay, so after that little rant, how do you deal with it? There are a couple of different approaches. The first one that I think is the most helpful as far as preventing the behavior in the future is, if you have the spoons, if you have the spell slots and the feel comfortable enough, calling out the behavior when you see it. Now, I think there's also important to differentiate between calling out and calling in. Those are two different terms. And when I'm saying calling out, I'm meaning more of calling in. So calling out is more of a public, defined as a public thing, and it's kind of meant to shame the person whose behavior you're calling out. Now, there might be a time and place for that. I certainly have run into situations where it's nope, I'm not going to call in, I'm going to call out, because that's the only way I'm going to get through to this person. But what I try and do, and I think what's the more effective way, calling in, which is having a one-on-one conversation and approaching it from the mindset of, I'm going to talk to this person as an equal and try and educate, try and provide some insight of why that behavior is problematic or why that behavior is harmful. This is especially, you can use this method really well if you're running into gatekeeping at a hobby store from the employees. You can bring up the fact of hey, approaching the women or other minority patrons who come to your store in this way makes this not a great welcoming place, and I'm more likely to go shop somewhere else. Now, if the employees don't seem receptive to this, you might talk to the store owner or manager. Oftentimes you can find out who that is and just let them know, like, hey, this is negatively impacting your business. And I bet that they will then take actions to make sure that their employees aren't being gatekeepers. But that definitely requires spoons, and it's also a situation of trying to identify, is this this individual in this situation something that I think that I could get through to this person, that they'd be receptive, or they just aren't aware of what their behavior is, how it's coming across, and so they will be happy to change it. Or is this person very purposely gatekeeping? Now, if they're very purposely gatekeeping, you may not be able to get through to them. And in that case, it might just be best to just ignore them, to just go about your business and just be like, okay, great. I won't play at your gaming table. I'll go play at that table over there, or I'll start my own. Or it might be a situation of just going, okay, well, nobody in this store wants me here. I will take my business elsewhere. So yeah, that's kind of two different, like, I'm not going to get any kind of impact on this person who's gatekeeping, and just, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to either walk away or just ignore them and go about my business. Now, another way that you might potentially try and get through to a gatekeeper is getting help. So if you are going to a new gaming store and you're maybe a little nervous about how they might react to you, go with a friend. Have backup. If nothing else, you have somebody else that you can turn to and be like, did that just happen? Yep. And especially if they are somebody I oftentimes am out shopping with Ryan at places, and so if they're somebody who identifies with that majority, let's be honest, white cis male group that are in the hobby, they might be able to get through in a way that you can't. And if we're interested, maybe I'll do a little video talking about how to be a good ally, stuff like that in the future. If you want that, let me know in the comments. So yeah, it can be very frustrating and very disheartening to deal with gatekeepers in the hobby, and I really wish that there weren't any. At the same time, I've even caught myself kind of almost falling into that gatekeeper role of seeing somebody who's interested in something and going, oh, you're not who I would expect to be interested in wargaming. Why are you interested? Stuff like that. And I think it's important to try and recognize that behavior in yourself. Oftentimes a lot of us in these geeky hobbies, we're in the out group. Not that that's an excuse, but it can seem odd when somebody that doesn't seem like is part of your group wants to be in it. So I think it's good to approach it in the, if you are asking questions, if you are trying to find out how much experience do they have, asking those questions in a, not trying to force the other person to prove themselves, because that's oftentimes what you get into with the gatekeeping, that it's you have to prove that you belong here before I'm going to accept you in this hobby, but more in the, I'm excited, I want to find out what you're excited about, what you know, and then the excitement of if they are new or they've only played this aspect, but you've played this aspect over here, getting to share that excitement with them. I think that's when you run into the oh yes, I feel welcome. I feel like even if I don't know everything about the hobby, if I'm new or I've only had these experiences and now I'm wanting to try out a new system or something, you feel welcomed even if you don't know everything, because there's that excitement there, and it's not I have to prove that I belong, but I'm being welcomed in. So yeah, have you had any experiences with gatekeeping? Have you found any really good ways to, turn it around and, maybe confront the gatekeeper and that they've changed their behavior or they've at least realized what they've been doing? Let's talk more about it in the comments below. A big thanks to our patrons, especially Bryce. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you subscribe, because we make videos here about tabletop RPGs and our other geeky interests on a weekly basis. And you can also follow us on our social medias to see what we get up to day to day, and we also post about like where you can find us other places, like I'm in this fun new Pathfinder game that I'm really enjoying. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! Whee! Spinny chair! Oh, I can make it all the way around! Without hitting the desk. Bye!